Welcome to the October 2022 Zoning Board of Adjustments meeting. I'm calling the meeting to order at 6:01 p.m. And we do have a quorum of 4 board members, and we would like to move into approval of minutes. Is there a motion to approve the July minutes of 2022?
So moved.
Is there a second? It's been motioned and second. All in favor, raise your hand. All opposed? The minutes have been approved for July 2022. We'd like to move into new business. This is a consideration and possible action for VARZ 22-17, a variance to reduce parking requirement for a general retail store use. A request of the Palan LLC represented by Rohit Bhuriya, excuse me for mispronunciation, owner, to allow a variance as permitted by the Unified Development Code Ordinance No. 2000-T to allow for a reduction in the required parking for a general retail store use in the general commercial district. And the general location is 3520 East Walnut Street, Palan, Texas. Do we have a staff report?
Yes, Chair. Let me introduce Patrick Bauer to present the staff report. Patrick, take it away.
Thank you, Martin. Good evening, Chair and members of the board. The request before you tonight is to reduce the required parking specifically for a general retail store use from 52 spaces for a 10,400 square foot building down to 48 spaces. So staff has sent notice through the local newspaper as well as to all property owners within 200 feet, and the property owner or representative also has posted signs on the property. And to date, staff has received 4 written comments against, 1 phone call against, and 1 phone call asking for more information. And predominantly the comments were regarding the busy intersection at Walnut and Galveston, and if any parking would overflow into either Galveston or Lockheed, if that would be a possibility if it was reduced. So looking at the zoning of the property, as mentioned, it's a general commercial property with some general commercial to the east and also some to the west. And then to the north is a general business property. And then to the south, southeast is a planned unit development residential area. So then looking at the future land use of the property, it's designated as village district. And then also the properties to the south, east, and west are also the village district. And that property to the north is the retail, office, and services future land use. So kind of looking at the history of the property, originally it was annexed into the city in 1959, and it was first platted in 1958 as a part of the airport subdivision. As you can see, that image on the left kind of shows that original plat with the subject property as it sits now. So originally it was made up of 8 platted lots that fronted on Walnut and Lockheed. And so looking at those first lots 7 through 10, which were along Walnut, that was originally a single-family residence that was developed in 1958 and then was demolished sometime in between 2010 and 2012. And then lots 17 through 20, which are along Lockheed, were developed as a service repair garage in 1970. And then recently in March 2022, all of these lots 7 through 10 and lots 17 through 20 were combined together into 1 lot, which is the subject property today. And then looking at the land uses that are around the property, we see the post office to the north, a used auto sales to the east. We see the single family residences to the south, southeast, with a landscape reserve. That's that sidewalk along Galveston, designated as a landscape reserve. And then also to the west is a electrician office and heating and AC services office business. So then getting a view of the property from the roadway, we see from Walnut Street, the kind of the front of the property. And then to the next frontage of the property, we see it along Galveston Avenue, because it's more of the corner of Galveston and Lockheed. And then finally, we see the property from Lockheed Street, which is the other side of Walnut. As you can see, the post office in the background. So here's the proposed site plan as submitted with the packet. We see the retail building, which is 10,400 square feet positioned on the property, as well as generally where the parking would be positioned, the 48 spaces as proposed. And we also get a view of where those driveways would be located. And also just to note, one of the things that whenever the property was platted, there was right-of-way dedication that was to be given along Walnut, and also I believe at the corner of Galveston and Lockheed Street through a corner clip. And that totaled approximately 2,289 square feet of the overall property. So that's just to make that noted that there was right-of-way dedication during the platting of the property. And then off to the right, we have these tables to show the parking calculation per code, and then as the applicant has requested. So per the code, a general retail store that is under 25,000 square feet is required to provide a parking ratio of 1 space per 2,000 square feet of area. And so, my bad, did I say 2,000? 200, thank you, Martin, 200 square feet of floor area. And so for 10,400 square feet, that would require 52 parking spaces. And so if we look at the parking calculation as requested by the applicant, they are specifically requesting 48 spaces, which comes out to roughly 1 space per 217 square feet. So then looking at the approval criteria, staff found that the request met 3 of the eight approval criteria. And so the request in staff's analysis, the request does not meet 5 of the 8 criteria for granting variances. And staff finds that even though the subject property has lost land through the right-of-way dedication, a substantial portion of the subject property is still available to be developed upon. Staff also wanted to note that they recognize that the subject property is unique as it has 3 frontages. And so staff's recommendation, although the subject property is unique as it has 3 frontages, staff finds that the loss of land through the right-of-way dedication is not a significant physical hardship to justify the request, given that a substantial portion of the property can still be developed upon. Staff is therefore unable to recommend approval of the requested variance. And that concludes staff's report.
Thank you. We'd like to move into applicant presentation. Do you have anything that you'd like to present, sir? Would you please go to the podium and state your name and address for us, please?
All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Myself is Mr. Bhuriya, and I represent Palan LLC, who owns this piece of property on the track. I would really like to thank everybody here, and this is kind of my first experience. I'm very pleased the way it's going on. It's quite transparent. There's board members. I'm given a chance to say my side of the story, and I'm sure there are some wonderful community members who are also engaged in this conversation. So I would just like to say a few things and not take too much of everybody's time. When this tract was purchased, we were kind of sort of unaware that the Walnut, which is the main street, we are not going to have a main driveway on that side of the street on the property. And the second comment I would like to make is that the Texas Department of Transportation might have this 10-foot right-of-way. We were not aware of those things, but that is not exactly why I'm here for. But if we can keep these things, in back of mind before I go on forward. Now, I think Patrick mentioned that this property has 3 side streets facing, and it practically makes it look like there are 3 front ends, and therefore, in order to comply, with those requirements of the city and comply with the setbacks, also we had to kind of give up one side at least, because there's three of the sides facing the street. In addition to that, as Patrick mentioned earlier, the right-of-way dedication led to loss of roughly 2,400 square feet out of the entire property. And, the third thing that I would like to mention is if you see with the right on, or the driveway is not, we cannot provide the driveway on the Walnut side of this property. It has to be on the South Galveston side. And there, that also it's in the middle, and we have to provide a fire lane access inside the property. Due to that constraint, we are unable to exactly provide 1 space per 200 square feet of the property which is going to be built. And we are asking, because of that, we allow the parking space just by 4 numbers from 48 to 52. And that means each parking spot would be for 216 square feet, which is a 8%, kind of leverage we are asking for that. And again, as I mentioned, it's that fire lane access that has to be within the property, which is, causing a little hardship in terms of the parking space. And last but not the least, I would like to say, if you see the on the projection, it says the landscape area is almost 19%, which is also in excess of what generally the city of Palan would require, and that would make it look even better by providing more green landscape. So because of all the above factors that I mentioned, I would urge the city of Pearland, the community, and the board members to give us 52 parking spots instead of the 48 for the same size of the project. And with this, I would like to conclude my presentation. And once again, I would like to thank everybody. It's post 6 p.m. Everybody would be with their family and spending their time, but instead of that, we all are getting involved in the community and trying to do better development of the community. And thank you for allowing me to participate in the development of this community.
Thank you, sir.
And with this, I close my presentation.
Thank you, sir. We'd like to move into any persons wishing to speak for or against. We have one person signed up, Paul Eskins. And sir, would you get to the podium, would you state your name and address? And you can have a seat, Mr. Bhuriya.
Paul Eskine, 2519 Park Avenue, Pearland, Texas.
And I'm sorry, sir, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you.
Sir, at the max.
My name is Paul Eskine. I own Houston Aircraft Instruments, which is there on Park Avenue, not too far from this area. And I saw that this was going to be up on the business tonight. And what I was looking at was, for me, it's just 4 parking spaces. And so that area has been rather, let's say, trashy or not used for decades in the old town site. And so seeing something now that the Sullivan brothers are bringing in the development around us and seeing other things start to happen, it's nice that that area, which was connected with the old airport, is starting to, have somebody that wants to come in. And, considering the gentleman's situation with being on the corners, having all the greenery and the trees that he's going to have, I'd like to ask that the board, allow the variance. I know other areas there. We're looking for new development in the old town site. The old town site does have problems where you have businesses that only have 3 or 4 parking places, because it was a long time ago, but it's just very hard to park in that area. And so I know AutoZone is a rather large building, but it doesn't have, it has a lot of parking places, but they're never filled in, okay? So I can't assume that whatever retail place that he puts in would use up all those parking places. It'd be hard to do. And, I saw the diagrams and stuff. So as you know, I don't have anything involved in it, don't know the gentleman, don't know the, other than just being, having my business near there. But I'm also an advocate, and people know me as an advocate for the old town site. And so I'm looking for always something good that comes in that has a lot of the trees and the shrubs, and will make the area look nicer. And so if we're just dealing with 4 parking places and that's all, I would ask them to do the variance to give them. So I thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Any other person wishing to speak for or against? Okay, we'd like to move into staff and applicant discussion and commission. Any questions or comments from the board to the staff or applicant?
Just a quick question to the staff, if I could. If we added, we're going to do some math here. If we added the 2,289 square feet that was removed for the 10-foot public right-of-way, if we added that back in, would that allow 52 parking spaces, or would it still be only 40? Well, let's just do that calculation. In other words, if there had not been the reduction in space due to the right-of-way reduction, would we need to be considering a variance or 4 parking spots?
I see your hand, but the question was directed to staff first. Yes, sir.
I guess my question, it boils down to, is the city's code or TxDOT, whoever this is, requiring the reduction due to some city code or TxDOT code for right-of-way, is that specifically what has caused the necessity of applying for a reduction, a variance?
First, an issue of clarification. While the applicant said that it was TxDOT, it was not TxDOT. This is a city right-of-way, and the dedication was pursuant to the city's platting statute in accordance with the city's thoroughfare plan that's part of the comprehensive plan. So it's not TxDOT, it is a city requirement, but it is complying with state law. Specifically in reference to the question, I don't know if Martin's doing the math in his head to see if that's possible, but I think that if the dedication wasn't there, if you would imagine that line that's on Walnut being moved up, you know, where would you fit 4 more spots on this site plan? And you might be able to squeeze 2, if that line moved up, you might get 2 additional spots is what I'm thinking. Patrick, you might have done the math and you might know better. I think you would have been able to get 2 more spots at the corner of, what is that, of Walnut and Galveston. Does that sound right?
Yeah, that's about, and if it's a 10-foot dedication, you could say like a parking spot is traditionally 9 feet by 18 or 20 feet. So yeah, but it also depends on, it could allow for a reconfiguration of the lot. You could use other types of parking spaces like parking spaces that are along the building that aren't ones that you would pull in, but you would parallel park in. So it's more of a configuration. Like they could totally reconfigure the building, then that could fit them. So it's a little bit of a harder question to answer, yes or no. And maybe, yeah.
Just mathematically, would it fit?
I was going to say, Patrick's saying virtually what I was going to say. You could potentially fit in parallel spaces against here. The issue is that you have to have 24 foot of back out in order to satisfy this 90-degree head-in parking spaces. So while potentially you could pick up a space here and a few spaces along the side, theoretically it is possible, but also theoretically a different building configuration or a different size of the building, or so there are too many variables to give you a straight yes or no.
Okay, I understand. Thank you very much.
Gosh. Okay. We'd like to move into consideration and possible action. Would you read the motion? Would you read the motion?
Excuse me, before you make a motion, I apologize. I should have asked the question of staff a little bit earlier. Martin, the landscaping that they're providing in their site plan, the applicant is saying that is over, above, and beyond. Is that correct?
So the minimum required landscaping for a commercial site within the general commercial district is 15%. So there is an additional 4% being provided according to what was presented.
And the reason why I mention that is if the ZBA is considering approving this, and part of that consideration was as the applicant presented the enhanced landscaping, you as the board might want to include that enhanced landscaping as a condition of your approval. So if you were going to consider it because the applicant and the member of the public and what was on the display, you think it's necessary for that enhanced landscaping, I would encourage you to include that in your approval. Otherwise, when the building plan comes in, they will only have to build according to code. And while you might have thought they were going to do it, you want to make sure that they do it. I think that's the best way to describe that.
So as we continue this discussion, with the additional landscaping, is that mentioned because we want the area to be more beautification? I mean, why are we doing this? Why are we asking?
We weren't asking. I don't think that was a staff requirement.
Okay.
That would be a question to the applicant as to why they thought 19% instead of 15% landscaping was appropriate.
So, Mr. Bhuriya, would you go to the podium and maybe clear this from your standpoint of view, sir?
Sure. With the configuration of the building and, the built out, the number of parking spots and trying to put everything, it would be best to, put a landscape there instead of just kind of leave it alone and have something else sitting. That wouldn't look good. This would look more, pleasant to the community and people's eyesight, and it's better to do better landscaping. That's what we thought.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you. So we have additional question.
Again, this is for staff. Is this, I don't know what enhanced landscaping really is, but is that something that staff needs to see before we vote on this, or?
No, sir. If that was going to be your consideration, we don't need to see that landscaping. We have the percentage on the proposed site plan. And if you were going to do that, then I would say that you make a motion to approve on the condition that the landscaping be 19% as reflected in the proposed site plan. So that would be the condition.
That does not have anything to do with the configuration of the building or the parking lots or anything I'm looking at right here on the screen, correct?
It's reflected on that screen. If you look at the word packet at the very bottom in the middle, immediately above that, there is landscaped percentage equals 19%.
Yes.
So it doesn't say that these trees as reflected or these bushes as reflected in this site plan have to be here. However, it does require it to be 19%, whereas the city code only requires 15% landscaping. So if they want the reduction in parking, you can make the condition of the reduction in parking to be enhanced landscaping, and that would be at that 4% increase.
Okay.
And the enhanced landscaping is something that staff would fully support.
Okay. So we'd like to move into consideration and possible action. Do we have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve VARZ 22-17 as presented, to include as well enhanced landscaping as outlined on the document presented.
Is there a second?
I second the motion.
It's been motion and second. All in favor, raise your hand. All opposed, raise your hand. Motion carries 4-0. We'd like to move into our second order of business, which we want to make sure the parties are here for VARZ 22-18. We want to make sure that you were okay with 4 board members versus 5. Okay, we will move forward with item agenda 2, which is VARZ 22-18, a fence variance for a residence in a residential estate. And this is a request by Signature Homes LLC, represented by Jennifer Pineda, applicant on behalf of Edith Valencia, owner, to allow a variance as permitted by the Unified Development Code, Ordinance number 2000-T, to allow a 7-foot high decorative fence within the front yard in lieu of the 4-foot permitted in the residential estate district. This is a general location of 1910 Hill House Road, Palan, Texas. Staff report.
Thank you, Chair. Let me once again introduce Patrick to provide the staff report. Patrick, take it away.
Thank you, Martin. So specifically, the fence variance as presented to you today is to allow for a 7-foot high decorative fence within the front yard in lieu of the permitted 4-foot fence. And so staff sent notice to the public newspaper, as well as the property owner posting signs on the property, and all property owners within 200 feet received a notice of this public hearing. And to date, staff has received 5 phone calls just asking for more information on the request. And so as mentioned, the zoning of the property is residential estate, and is surrounded on all sides by residential estate as well. And then looking at the future land use, we see predominantly suburban residential, with to the southeast being public/semi-public future land use. So a little history on the property. It was originally annexed into the city in 1998. It was then platted as a part of the amending plat of Eagle Landing in 2014. And the construction of a new single-family residence, which the existing single-family residence was begun in 2021. And so looking at the uses that are around the property, it's predominantly single-family residences with addition of the school to the southeast. And so here we just get a view from the roadway of the subject property. We get a view first on the left is the side of the subject property along Hawk Road. And then on the right is the view of more of the front yard along Hill House Road. And so this is the site plan for the property. And first off, I'll note the different parts of the fence. So the red, outlined in red, which is more towards the back of the property or the left of the screen, is a 7-foot wood fence. And then the purple portion, or purple bluish portion, is the proposed 7-foot decorative iron fence. And specifically, we will be looking today at the front yard portion, which is outlined in yellow, as this is the portion that requires the 4-foot high decorative fence. And then, so this is just a view of what the proposed decorative fence will look like as per the applicant. And so reviewing the approval criteria for variances, staff found that the variance only met 3 of the 8 criteria. And looking at staff's analysis, well, the request does not meet 5 of the 8 criteria for granting variances. Staff would like to note, however, that recent amendments to the UDC have been added to add flexibility in the application for decorative residential fences, specifically along thoroughfares. And in this case, Hawk Road is designated as a local street, and Hill House Road is designated as a minor collector. The proposed fence, though, is similar in character to other fences within the city that are along those higher classified roadways. And lastly, the board has approved other instances of decorative residential fences in the past, but each of those fence permits or fence variances has unique circumstances and characteristics that must be weighted individually. And so staff is not strongly opposed to the requested variance, but must maintain the code, and therefore is unable to recommend approval of the requested variance based on the approval criteria. That concludes staff's report.
Thank you, Patrick. Do we have an applicant presentation? Yes, would you go to the podium and state your name and address for us, please?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jennifer, and I'm here today representing Signature Homes and the owner, Edith Valencia, present here today for the property of 1910 Hill House Road. As you are hearing today, we're here to know on the proposing the installation of a 7-foot tall decorative fence along Hill House Road and partial of what's Hawk Street there up to the garage. We understand that the fence does not meet the criteria, and this is why we're here today, for you guys to consider our proposal. The decorative fence will help the owner benefit from her residential land. That's one of our main things that we're here today. It would also help us, as you saw, the school is right around the corner. It would help us feel more secure in regards to the high school. And there's also neighbors with larger dogs. The owner does have larger dogs. That's also a big important reason for her to keep this fence. We also consider the safety of our neighbors with small children because they are building a pool in the backyard as well. And that, with a 4-foot fence, that can be easily accessed. We understand that there are several similar fences that have already been approved by the board along Hill House Road and Hawk Street. Well, thank you for your time for today, and that's all we wanted to present.
Okay, thank you so much.
Jennifer, before you step away, I was not able to say Jennifer Pineda because I didn't hear your last name. Are you the same Jennifer Pineda who was the applicant?
Yes.
Thank you. Otherwise, I'd ask you to fill out one of those yellow forms.
Oh, no, yes, that's me. I'm representing both the owner and Signature Homes today.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks.
Do we have any person wishing to speak for or against proposal? Would you please fill out the yellow card when you finish, go to the podium and state your name and address for us, please. And sir, you have 3 minutes once you start, okay?
Thank you. My name is Oscar Greenwood. My address is 1870 Hill House Road. I do have some concerns with the fence. I mean, what I've seen so far looks okay, but it is a little out of place in the neighborhood. My concern is with my home resale value. And so until I get more info, right now I'm against.
Okay, thank you, sir. And yeah, the yellow card, is it?
It's on the table in the lobby, sir.
It's on the table in the lobby. And would you fill that out for us and bring that to the front? Thank you. Do you have any other person wishing to speak for or against? You'd like to move into staff and applicant discussion. Any questions from the board or comments?
Staff, question for you. Can you bring up the slide that had the pictures of the exterior of the, Question on the slide the picture on the left, I see a wooden fence. Is that on the same property? Is that the wooden fence that there it says seven height wood fence, or is that what I'm seeing where you have the red dot there?
Yes.
Right, but that's the same fence.
Okay. Did that require a special exception or a variance or something to put up a 7-foot high fence there?
That was an existing condition of the site, as far as I'm aware.
Okay. The same would be true on the top there. I guess that's the north side, if I'm correct. That was a pre-existing fence.
I'll let the applicant speak to.
Okay. But we're not, obviously, we're only concerned tonight with the area within the yellow outline there, the front yard, I guess. So what I don't want to have happen, I don't want to get ahead of myself either, is if the board agrees to the 7-foot height of the new fence, that we don't put a 4-foot, a 4-foot height wooden fence back there. Is there some way that would the city require we match the height of the new fence and the old fence, or how would the city approach that?
So the fence height requirement is for when you are in the front yard of the residential property. The front yard is defined as the area from the property line to the front face of the structure. So because the area that is in concern is only this area highlighted in yellow. Everything else can be above 4 foot.
So potentially then at the bottom of the property line there next, now that blue portion just exactly where your area, that would not require a variance to put a 7 foot length or 7 foot height fence in that length. Is that correct?
Correct, because that is not on the front yard of this property.
So, oh, yeah. wait.
I was just going to say, okay.
So we are here because the applicant wants to put a fence. If they did not want to put a fence, we wouldn't be here. I'm trying to understand.
We're here because of the height of the proposed
Height
fence.
of it. It's too high.
Correct. So they get a 4 foot fence by right.
Gotcha.
They're requesting a 7 foot fence.
Okay. Gotcha. And with the 7 foot fence, we wanted to make sure that it is decorative enough that it is approved for aesthetics, basically.
I would not say that the board is determining if it's decorative or not.
Gotcha.
Staff is already saying that that is a decorative fence, so it meets our definition of decorative.
We're just looking at the height.
You're just looking at the height.
Thank you.
Can we go back to the screen that included the list of criteria determining what, yeah, thank you.
This question is for the applicant. What is the distance between the property line to the front of the house?
If you would go to the podium, please, and answer that if you can.
I believe it's 40 feet to the front of the house.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you.
Are there any photographs? We have a person who testified. I'm sorry, I've forgotten the name, but we have a person who testified that a concern about how the fence could potentially affect their property values. Are there any pictures of other property or other houses down any of the streets that might show us similar fences or?
So you can, okay, go. Okay, we would allow.
Can't hear what you're saying.
Yeah, would you?
I think what you said is you have several pictures with you that show other fences of a similar nature and similar height along Hill House and Hawk. Is that correct? And you have those with you now? Would the board like to see
Yes,
those
I would,
photos?
that's what I would like to bring, and so we can see those pictures. Thank you.
This would be a 7 foot.
Ms. Pineda, I see you've handed several sheets to them. Are those copies for them, or should we make copies so that that could be considered part of the record? Thank you. So then,
She said we can keep them.
when y'all are done, if you'd make sure that those come to Shelby so she could be sure to keep them in the file.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Pineda.
Just a question, clarification. I'm looking at some of the metal decorative fences. I don't want to misinterpret them, but are they 7 foot fences or they're smaller, 4 foot or 5 foot or something like that?
Again,
Those
Ms.
which- we
Pineda,
can't
again,
hear
we
you.
can't hear you, so please step back to the microphone.
this might be a
All the
7.
pictures that I submitted to you right now are all over 4 feet.
Does staff know, did we grant variances on all these that are over 4 feet? Do you have any idea?
So in the 6 years that I've had the pleasure of serving the board, I know that we have done fence variances on Yost and Berry Road. I do not recall Hawk and Hill House, but the board has been around longer than I have had the pleasure of being here at Pearland. So
This is standard what we see.
This is, I remember the houses on Yost that we've done this on before, and they look good. The fences look good. I drive down there frequently. That's all I have.
Any, okay, so we're, any other questions by the board? Comments? Okay. We'd like to move into consideration and possible action. Gary, would you read the motion?
I make a motion to approve variance 22-18 as presented.
Is there a second?
I second the motion.
It's been motion and second. Any discussion?
I don't know that this is determinative, of course, but like I just said, I know we've granted these type of variances, particularly on Yost Boulevard, and several very large homes over there north of 518. I'm going to vote yes on the motion when we vote.
Any other discussion? All in favor, raise your hand. All opposed, raise your hand. Motion carries 4-0. This will conclude the ZBA meeting for October 2022 at 6:43 p.m.